Welcome back, Julie and I have a fantastic, I know I say that every time, but I really, really, really mean it today, podcast for all of you today. We have been doing a series on why we know that this is the very beginning of a 25-year real estate boom, a generational housing boom that all of you are in the right place at the right time to be experiencing. And what we've been doing is we've been updating our notes along the way since we first did the show 6 or 8 months ago. So this is a fresh off the presses, research been updated version of why we know this is the beginning stages of a 25-year housing boom. And we've been calling this Make U.S. Housing Great Again, the 25-year surge. So Julie and I are doing this podcast for you today because we know you guys need motivation. We know some of you are experiencing more, being pulled in different directions than you've ever experienced before. We know some of you are questioning your future in real estate. We know some of you are questioning your sanity and all those things. Understandable. But what we're hoping you will take away from this show is the simple fact that you are absolutely in the right place at the right time. And we are absolutely at the very beginning stages of what will be a 25-year housing boom. And it's going to create more opportunity for you to help more people buy and sell real estate than you've ever experienced. And I don't care how long you've been in the business. Even if you've been in the business longer than Jules and I, you're at the very beginning stages of what's going to be the best, 10, 20, 30 years of your professional career, probably also your personal life. So Julie, are you fully engaged and motivated?
I am. And, we're going to talk about a lot of stats and facts, and it does actually come down to the numbers. If you think about the fact that this year we're on track to, there's lots of different predictions, but somewhere between 4 and 5 million sales. Okay. So there's two sides to every sale, and, that's how it goes. And when we talk about these stats and facts, compared to how many millions we're going to be talking about. So we're going to bring that out as we go through our points.
All right. So remember, these are points. These are a lot of notes. As always, we have 12 points. Hopefully you'll get through all of them today. And like I said, we've updated them. So when you've heard this podcast before, the notes that we were using then were relevant to then, but now we've updated it. And really, I think what we're doing is at this point, I think the first time we presented this information, I was probably 80% sure we were correct, but now I'm 110% sure. So if you want these notes, you know what to do. Subscribe to our newsletter. Just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. That is our daily newsletter that gives you access to all of our notes, the podcast, and also a lot of unique information that we create just for our newsletter subscribers. So just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. All right, so we're going to jump right into it. Number one, this is Julie's calling this, again, facts, stats, talking points for you and your prospects and clients. And if you are a real estate leader of any variety, team leader, maybe you're just leading yourself, you're running a revenue share group at EXP, whatever it is, feel free to use these notes, because really what you should be appreciating is unless you're dialed into the fact that you are in the right place at the right time, and we are at the beginning stages of what will be a 25-year real estate boom, it's going to pass you by because you're going to be too focused on maybe some other things, and you're going to be too focused on doom and gloom. You're not going to be realizing that this is actually the end of what was a 25-year real estate cycle. So that's a good place for me to start.
Yes.
And basically when Julie and I got in the business, that was really, the market was also at a bottom and it was pulling itself out. When Julie and I got in the business, interest rates were just like they were now. When we got in the business, it was pretty much a buyer's market everywhere. And it all started to change during our careers. So what we saw was the bottom of the market, and the market started to upswing. And the upswing was not consistent. It wasn't like a perfect bell curve. It's a jibbity-jabbity thing, some years better than others. But for the most part, it was consistently increasing the number of home sales, increasing the sale price, increasing the number of real estate agents, increasing the amount of revenue agents were making. Everything was getting increasingly better. Some years it was more, some years it was less, but it was always increasing. Housing boom. We had a couple bad years, and then what happened in 2009? Boom, took off again, and it's never slowed down. And then COVID put it on, obviously
Rocket
made it
boosters.
go, or something, right?
Something.
And so COVID then was crazy with what happened with interest rates and what happened with the housing market. Now that has run its course. And so what we're experiencing now are the sales that would have been happening in, say, 23, 24, and 25 all happened during the COVID period, because everything went on sale during COVID. And when everything went on sale, it pulled future demand out of the market, or rather it pulled future sales out of the market. And then you combine that with interest rates. So this is officially good news, bad news, depending on your perspective, the bottom of the real estate market and the end of the previous real estate cycle and the beginning of the new real estate cycle. And really, we feel, and we're seeing a lot of evidence to believe this is true, and we're going to share this with you now, why this is the beginning stages of what will be another real estate boom. But this one, unlike the previous ones going back in history, is going to be the biggest real estate boom in the history of perhaps the world. Big grandiose statement, but we're going to back it up with some facts. So Julie, let's get to the first point, and I'll get you started and you can read the point, okay?
Sure.
All right. A historic housing boom awaits. Julie Harris?
Yes. So as usually we start with a mindset point, accept the fact that this is true. The U.S. is on the brink of a 25-year housing boom, potentially the largest in history, as you said, Tom. Fueled by demographics, demand, policy shifts, and near zero crash risk, the surge will redefine the American dream. New single-family home construction, supercharged by U.S.-based technology, is set to drive explosive economic growth, building generational wealth for millions. So this is kind of putting together all of the points that we're about to get to into a mindset point. Accept the fact that all of these things are true, and then we're going to drill down on those, starting with point number 2. Ready?
All right. And point number 2, this is really the most important. If you only hear one point from all these points, this one's the most important one. Demographics drive absolutely unprecedented demand.
Yes, a demographic double whammy is squeezing the U.S. market. Millennials, okay, so millennials are born between 81 and 96. And Gen Z, who were born between 1997 and 2012, those two categories together are over 140 million people in the U.S. They're hitting their prime home buying ages, their 30s and 40s. Delayed by student loan debt, which is about almost $2 trillion nationally, that's according to the Federal Reserve. Now they're forming their households at record pace. Meanwhile, the baby boomers on the other end are 76 million people and starting to downsize, offloading homes into a market short by at least 4 to 5 million units based on what virtually everybody says, and especially per what NAR says. Okay, so as I said at the top of the podcast, look at those numbers, right? If we're looking for 5 million plus to kind of feel like we're back on track, remember, COVID was unusual. We had 6.5 million sales those years. If we want to get north of 5 million, which will get us back to a pretty normal market, more similar to 2018 and 19.
Like 5.5,
we only need 5
right?
million, but look at these stats. The millennials and Gen Z are 140 million people. Let's say a third of them are in household formation and want to buy a house. We're still way up. And then you add some percentage of the baby boomers, so another 76 million, who will be downsizing. That gives you inventory. And we have, just on this one point, more than enough demand.
Well, so this is important. You understood what she just said. The problem we had before, and let's say before is maybe 18 months ago, was lack of inventory. Now we're seeing in all major markets inventory return. The number one reason that home sales dropped off was lack of homes to buy, not the interest rates, in our opinion. Because if people could afford the payment, the interest rate doesn't matter. Matter of fact, if people can afford the payment, the price doesn't matter. The payment is what the problem was. And so builders took advantage of that and have been offering builder financing. And we've done previous podcasts teaching you guys how to do the same thing for your resales. But now what's happening is that the inventory has increased, and now we're going to get to reasons why we believe the interest rates are going to go down and why the payments are going to be less. So you're having what so far? What have we presented to you so far? A huge demographical, historic shift that's going to increase the demand for housing by probably 5 or 6x. We're now seeing that the inventory of homes for sale in the United States is finally increasing. We're going to talk about builders in a second. And we're going to start talking about why interest rates are also going to be on the decline. That's going to cause even more massive uptick in home sales. The demand is there, guys. You don't have to worry about whether or not they're buyers for the homes. You know that there are buyers for the homes. So we know that there's the buyers for the homes, and there's going to be a lot more buyers for a lot more homes. So now it's just a function of basically waiting the interest rates to fall, and then you're going to have what will definitely feel like something we've never experienced before. And the next point, Julie, is point number 3, a persistent housing shortage fuels growth.
Okay, so as we mentioned, let's drill down on this. The U.S. faces about a 4 to 5 million home deficit from a decade of underbuilding post 2008. Remember when the housing market crashed, builders stopped building for several years, okay? And both NAR and Freddie Mac report that. Now, there are many markets that are still seeing multiple bids, especially in the normal price ranges, the first-time buyer and move up. So that just demonstrates that we have this huge lack of inventory. That's going to continue to fuel probably for at least a decade. A lot of new construction. The builders are excited about this. You know, one of the updates we have to this report is that we're having some federal land released for new construction. I know, especially in Idaho and Utah, there's tons of that type of land, and they're doing deals with builders. There's some kind of exchange. I'm going to report on that on a future podcast. There's a lot of very interesting land deals going on with the government right now.
Well, but
with
Julie,
builders.
sorry for
Yes,
interrupting you, but this is the update to that point. The thing that
sure.
we're starting to see, and we coined the phrase "make housing great again." We're not trying to steal anything from Trump, but we suspect, and this is the thesis of our research on this, we suspect in the next 30 to 90 days, now that the tax bill is settled, now that the tariff thing is mostly settled, we have very big reasons to believe that housing is going to be the next focus of the administration. And we do believe that they're going to call it "make housing great again." And we do believe that they're going to, and we're going to pick up on the points that are relevant to this. Yeah, I know. And we do believe that everything that we're rolling out to you guys right now is going to be supercharged, and it's going to happen in a very short period of time. And that goes right to point number 4. Fannie and Freddie Mac are essentially going to be released from conservatorship, and that's going to lower the cost for mortgages and going to create a lot more mortgage programs. But going back to the previous point, so what you're going to see, Julie was talking about the government releasing lands for doing development, all the rest of it. What we believe is going to happen is combining essentially the big points, the big takeaways from point 3 and 4 that Julie's about to share with you, is that Fannie and Freddie is going to generate an enormous amount of money that the Trump administration is then going to put into primarily new construction. We believe, just like after World War II, there's going to be a public-private effort to build more homes and build homes in where some of these new boom cities are forming around where some of these new industries are forming because of tariffs. All these things are going to take time, but in the short while, we believe that mortgages are going to become more readily available, and there's going to be a hell of a lot more new construction that's going to make up for the deficit of inventory, especially outside of these heavily dense areas in the country. So the big one is going to be, and this is going to be the driver for a lot of what we're talking about, is Fannie and Freddie. They're essentially going to be coming out of conservatorship. And again, this is an update to our notes. What does appear to be happening is the Trump administration is going to take Fannie and Freddie, is going to take both of them and combine them, and is going to do a new initial public offering, and going to offer them for sale for investors. And when they do that, it's going to be the largest IPO in the history of everything. And because you're already talking about Fannie and Freddie, despite what you might be believing about those companies, they're actually some of the most profitable companies on planet Earth. And they have more money saved than anything other than like maybe the largest hedge funds or maybe Microsoft or something. You guys get the point? They are incredibly rich companies, and they have, if I remember correctly, over $4 trillion worth of assets. That's just in Fannie Mae.
Yeah, that counts as rich. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little rich, right?
Yeah.
So when those companies are released back to the public
5 trillion.
markets,
I looked it up. Yep.
5 trillion. When those companies are released back into the public markets, you're going to be able to buy into the IPO. You can actually buy pre-IPO now. You're then going to be able to see all the money that the government's going to make, because they're still going to have a big controlling share of the companies. They're going to get the benefit of the huge stock offering. And what are they going to do with that money? They're going to refocus that money on making housing great again. That is our premise. That was our premise when we originally came up with these points. And we're seeing every reason to believe that, fortunately, we were right in our predictions. So Julie, if you have any other additional points with point number 4, drill down.
Yeah, well, if you're not following the Fannie and Freddie story, you should start following it now, because it is getting a lot more press. And, you know, we're not your stock advisors, but you start studying this and you'll want to do it on your own. So keep that in mind. All right. So point number 5 is kind of a result of point number 4. This should cause mortgage innovation that will boost accessibility. So post-conservatorship, Fannie and Freddie can assume more risk that potentially reduces private mortgage insurance, or PMI, which, as you all know, is part of your payment, right? So there's a lot of math in the newsletter that they can look into, like what is the value of losing PMI, that part of your payment. That doesn't just make your payment less, which of course makes the affordability better, but it gives you more buying power. It gives you more purchase power. So that person, I think a lot about first-time buyers that are stretching to make it to the average sale price of, say, $425,000 in most markets. Well, if they didn't have to pay PMI, probably could qualify for that. And maybe you've got somebody that doesn't like their choices at 400,000 and now they can buy a new construction home for 450 because they don't have PMI. So that's one of the predictions that we have is when they go into conservatorship, we might drop that PMI part of it and a whole lot of, as you mentioned, Tim, mortgage competition. Go ahead.
When they come out of conservatorship is
when
what
they
you
come
meant
out
to
of
say.
conservatorship.
Right.
Yeah.
And, but they're also, we're going to see a lot of different types of, remember, people ultimately, like, nobody cares what the price of a house is. Everyone says they care what the price of the house is. Nobody cares what the price of anything is when it comes to a house because it's so expensive. They care what the payment is. So if all of a sudden there's different types of mortgage products, all of a sudden there's different types of ways to purchase real estate, that's what's going to fuel the housing market. And that's what Fannie and Freddie are going to do. There are a ton of programs out there that really smart people have come up with that won't qualify for Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, essentially insurance is basically what it is. And so they've never actually really taken off. But you're going to see, and I'll give you one of the predictions that Julie and I are looking for more evidence of this, but it makes sense. If we expect that Fannie and Freddie are going to create a program that's going to allow qualifying borrowers to have essentially buy a house with virtually no money down, get preferential financing, and then the government or Fannie Freddie will take an equity position in the house. So if you, for example, needed a 10% down payment to buy the house and 10% comes from Fannie and Freddie, you're putting no money down. Fannie Freddie is then going to have a 10% stake in the appreciation of the property. So if you buy it for $400,000 and 2 years later it's worth $550,000, you put it for sale, Fannie and Freddie are going to be entitled to a percent of the appreciation because obviously they were an investor with you in purchasing it. So we think there's going to be a lot of hybrid programs that are going to come around the bend that's going to make the American dream once again to own a home, because that's always what it's been. Every single study that's ever been done that is not written by a communist or a socialist trying to make you believe, like Karl Marx, that people shouldn't be owning private property. So that aside, proves that home ownership is the greatest vehicle to build wealth, certainly in our country. And the differences between net worth of a lifetime renter versus a lifetime owner is measured in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Julie?
It's 40% more if you compare a renter versus a homeowner in terms of their net worth. The homeowner has 40 times between equity and savings, et cetera. So keep that in mind. All right. So ready for point number?
Yes, but I have an update for it. Don't read that one. We already talked about that one. So I have an update for this one. All right. Good. So the next thing that's going to happen is Fannie and Freddie, essentially new types of homes other than stick-built homes are going to become very common. And so right now, again, because of the way that Fannie and Freddie are being managed, you have to essentially they're only effectively financing or insuring the financing of the same types of homes that we've been built for the last 300 years. Stick-built homes, concrete foundations, basements, the whole thing.
Standard issue stuff.
Right. And yet technology has marched on. And yet now you have, good luck getting a Fannie and Freddie loan on a prefab. I mean, it's very hard to do. The interest rates are going to be ridiculous, all the things. But that's all going to change because the technology is now making it possible. 3D printed homes, very nicely done prefab homes, all these different types of, matter of fact, in a lot of cases, those types of homes are built better than a stick-built house. Yep. So what we're going to see is Fannie and Freddie financing available on it's going to open the door for a lot of innovation and actual construction and the style of homes that people live in. You're going to have maybe subterranean houses. I don't know. Maybe they're going to start financing tree houses. Who knows? Maybe it makes sense, right? We could all be like hobbits and live in the ground. Who knows? I'm kind of trying to make you guys laugh, but that's what's going to happen because when Fannie and Freddie go public again, you're going to see competitors from the private industry that are going to start competing with Fannie and Freddie. What was it? JP Morgan, I think it was, already said that they're going to start a competitor to Fannie and Freddie. So that means Fannie and Freddie is going to have to, guess what? Make it so more people are going to want to do business with them. Make it so more people are going to want to, because they are offering better products, better interest rates, better terms, all the rest of it. Because there's competition right now because U.S. housing has effectively been socialized. Without Fannie and Freddie right now, most people wouldn't be able to get a mortgage. Well, as soon as it is no longer socialized and capitalism gets to rule the roost as far as what types of mortgage products are created, you're going to see a boom again, like we've never seen before. We have studied this. Julie and I find it very interesting to look at all the different technological evolution or technological money that's been poured
Innovation.
into innovation. Thank you. And yet none of it ever comes to market. Why? Why? You guys have read about these things. We've talked about them in the podcast. Why do none of them ever come to market? Because people can't finance them. That's why. What if all of a sudden you can finance a prefab home? What if you all of a sudden you can finance a 3D printed home? You're going to see a lot more of them. And the stick built homes, again, are going to be obviously financeable, but they're going to have to start having competition, which is again going to push the conversation forward about the different types of real estate that's available. Open your mind, because that's what's coming to your market near you, because of the second point with regards to demographics. Demographics are going to force the market to satisfy the demand, and the government's going to get the heck out of the way. That's our prediction, but we believe that we are correct. And Julie did suggest something. We're not your financial advisors. We're not your stock pickers. We don't know what the heck we're talking about. We're just your friendly real estate coaches. You might want to consider purchasing some Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac stock ASAP. Oh, by the way, if you love this podcast, which I know you do, you definitely want to join Premier Coaching. You can join Premier Coaching right now for free. Just go to premiercoaching.com or click the link below. And yes, that does include a daily semi-private coaching call with the Harris Certified Coach. All right, Julie, let's go on to the next point, which is point number 7. Tariffs spark manufacturing and housing hubs.
That's right. So U.S. tariffs on foreign goods are relocating some manufacturing, creating more housing demand. TSMC's $100 billion investment in 5 Arizona chip plants this year are already adding 25,000 jobs. Now, those people have to buy houses, don't they? Driving home building in Buckeye and Maricopa counties. We have coaching clients there that have reported exactly this is happening. Lots of new construction and different types of new construction. Similar U.S. booms are eyed in Ohio for Eli Lilly. That's a $2 billion project. Indiana has Clarios at $1.5 billion. And South Carolina, a BMW expansion. You'll like that, Tim, car nerd knows, where job growth fuels new boom towns and expansions of existing towns. So that's already happening. And those are just a few examples. All right. So we have, related to that, similar to that, is point number 8. Boom towns
Julie,
are also emerging.
Julie,
Yes.
it is worth mentioning, though, when you have one of these big announcements of a company that's going to start manufacturing in the United States, it's a really it's obviously political and it's grabbing headlines. And everyone's, but you got to remember all the other businesses that are going to be formed.
That's right. It's not just that company. It's all the support companies.
Exactly. So and there's the new dry cleaners, the new ice cream place, the new movie
restaurants to service the people working there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what's exciting. And then these businesses are forming, or they're going to be building and already are building in the states that have usually the most conducive legal and political structures to help them build. And there's, you're seeing Florida, Texas, Tennessee, Ohio. You're seeing these states that had been before maybe what, snooty people called flyover states. But now those are the states where there's a huge workforce of people that want jobs. And the governments are smart enough to give tax incentives to a lot of these companies. Those are going to be the new boom towns. That's where you're going to see the most growth in the country. The old winners are not necessarily going to be the new winners as far as geographic areas of the country going forward. So point number 7, Julie, tariffs spark manufacturing and housing hubs. We just did that one. Yep. Point number 8, boom towns emerge nationwide. We kind of just did that one too.
Well, right. But to your example about previous flyover states, Texas has Samsung at $17 billion at a Taylor plant. Now, Taylor's a tiny little town. We used to live near there. Remember, Taylor's near Georgetown. So that's an example of a new boom town. Okay, Taylor existed before, but barely. I don't even think they have a traffic light, right? So now, what do you think 17 billion is going to do for a town like Taylor? It's all good. So, all right, that's all related to boom towns. Number 9.
I can tell you one thing for sure. We're not selling our rentals in Georgetown.
No, that's right. Or our mini ranch. Exactly. Okay, number 9, technology supercharges construction. U.S. construction will be an economic titan with each home generating 3 jobs minimum and $150,000 in activity. That's from the National Home Builders Association. U.S. tech like modular homes, 20 to 50% faster. You can build them 10 to 20% cheaper. And 3D printed homes, you keep mentioning, a lot of that's happening in Texas, is going to meet some more demand. A California 3D printed neighborhood cut build times to 6 weeks from 6 months. So this is already happening. This is not speculation. And there's lots of different versions of this. I have coaching clients that have sold those types of homes and or are now going on listings where they're competing against those types of homes that are, affecting pricing because they're building them faster and cheaper. So you need to know about this stuff. You can set your Google searches to your town and searching for that type of, maybe it's 3D printed homes or new construction in general, so that you can stay up to speed on this.
Also pay attention to, I'll tell you guys, if you want to look into the future, look to see where you see massive amounts of land being sold, and it's usually over long expansions of space, because we also have read that in a lot of these areas where these new factories are being built to the major cities and major airports, they're going to be building high-speed rail. So this is going to be a way that they can develop, because you can develop high-speed rail faster than you can build the infrastructure for, obviously, interstates. Now, who knows how that'll all sort out, but it is kind of fascinating. A lot of high-speed rail in the United States has always been a bit of a folly, a bit of a waste of money, but this very well could be, just to give credit where credit is due, guess who? Elon Musk has been working on a lot of high-speed rail stuff through his boring company. So that very well could be what we're looking at. And again, you're going to see a lot of innovation that's going to happen, that's going to connect these new major hubs in the country. Now, this is over the next 25 years. Don't expect this to happen over the next 36 months. All right. So next point, Julie, technology supercharges construction. This is point number 9.
We just did that one, number 10.
Number 10.
No crash risk. Okay, so this is the point of all points that makes you and I want to have our heads explode when people start saying, oh, there's going to be a crash. All the baby boomers are going to flood the market with their homes for sale all at once in the exact same second, or any iteration of the market's going to crash. Well, there's virtually no crash risk. That's point number 10. We do have a very stable foundation. A US crash is nearly literally impossible. Why? Because about 40% of homes, that's 56 million out of 140 million, are mortgage free. That makes them immune to foreclosure. Can't foreclose on something where there's no mortgage. Of the 84 million that do have mortgages, 80% of them have rates below 5%, locking owners in, at a 1347 monthly payment at 3.5% versus maybe $1,900 at 6.5%. So people generally don't default on homes where they have a lot of equity and a really low interest rate, even if they do have a mortgage. That's very different than what happened in the previous housing crash. Now, people will try and say, because prices went up and because we had multiple bids, that this time is just like last time, and that what goes up must come down. And on the surface, that sounds very logical, doesn't it? And yet, none of the underlying factors are even remotely similar in today's current, scenario. People have equity. They don't have mortgages. They have super low interest rates. This is part of what explains a refinance and rehab boom that we're having right now. And also is suppressing some of the inventories. People are sucking equity out of their house because if they're going to pay a higher interest rate, they don't want to pay it on the full amount. Some people would rather make an extension to their house, do an ADU, something like that. So, but that's not a big part of the market.
Well, the moral of the story is there's absolutely no reason to believe there's going to be a housing crash. Absolutely no reason to believe prices of homes are going to continue to inflate. Absolutely no reason to believe that owning a home isn't going to continue to be one of the greatest investments that anyone can make. By the way, owning more than one home is even better. So again, you run into anybody who doesn't own a home, and they're all going to say, I want to own I want to own real estate. If you run into somebody who owns a home, they're probably going to say they want to own another home, or they want to, as a second home or a third home, or they're going to say, I want to, upgrade or downgrade the home that I'm in. Those types of conversations. In other words, everybody is thinking about real estate. If anything, the housing boom has proven one thing: housing is resilient. Because of some bad policy, housing had this, obviously had a crash. The bad policy has been washed out of the system. It can't be replicated. There's no reason to believe it's ever going to happen again. And what's most important is, starting in 2009, everybody saw the hockey stick growth that home values did across the country. And by the way, even in this slower time for real estate, it's still doing tremendously well. The jury is in. Housing is a long-term winner. Anyone who tells you there's going to be a real estate crash, they either didn't do the homework or they're frankly just full of it. All right, next point, Julie, is
wealth building for generations. That's point number 11. The upcoming boom that we've just started builds wealth for US millennials and Gen Z. For example, let's say that they bought a $300,000 house, okay? Maybe it's a starter condo, but they just bought it and with 5% down. That's going to probably be worth near $500,000 by 2040. That's a lot better than renting, isn't it? I read a great, or I think I saw one of our coaching clients did this really killer video, right? And what she said was, if you're hearing, people are saying, I'm going to wait for rates to come down. And the example was given that in 1971, rates were about 8%. Okay. So they had come down from the crazy like 18%. They had come down to like 8 or 9%. And if you had waited until rates came down under that rate, you would have waited until about the time that we bought our first house in 1992, 1993. So in those intervening 20 years where you were waiting for rates to come down because they just kept on not coming down, had you purchased a house back then, it would be worth at least 5 times as much as it was when you purchased it, even with that higher rate, and you might have even paid it off. So they did some math in this video, and I thought it was really interesting, the cost of waiting for rates to come down.
Well, there's a really good argument. If you guys have been paying, this is kind of obtuse, but if you guys have been paying attention to what gold has been doing in the last 18 months, so there is a really good argument between inflation and between demographics to believe, again, and we've given you some of these points as to why we believe this is true, why housing itself as an investment, not your investment advisors, obviously, is going to be perhaps the best place to put your money in addition to gold, because hard assets in times of inflation, and maybe the US dollar, who knows what it's going to do, are the places to put your money. Would you have, I remember, Julie, when you and I started selling real estate, we had coaching clients, or we're coaching clients. We had real estate clients that were in their 40s that basically had been waiting to get back in the market and made the bad decision of waiting for prices to fall, trying to save up their down payments because they had essentially missed the super cycle or missed the cycle and missed all the appreciation that happened through the 70s and then to the 80s, and then well into the 90s. So they were out and now they're coming back in, but had they stayed in the market in the first place? So really, guys, remember, at the end of the day, the price of a house, of course it matters, but it doesn't really matter. When people say housing's overpriced, relative to what? Relative
payments
to
matter. And let me prove it. Do you remember the purchase price of the car that you're making a payment on? I bet you don't, but you do know what your payment is, don't you?
Exactly. I mean, that's the truth. If you can afford it, like if you run into somebody who's griping or anybody, again, in socialized media, and they're arguing that house prices are too high. Well, what do you propose to do? Make everyone with a house lower their price? I mean, where does that even go? What you need to do is you need to, instead of worrying about what the house prices are, you need to get more people owning homes so everyone can benefit from the continued inflation and appreciation on real estate. The only real way to do that is get the payments lower. That's the bottom line. When people can afford the payments, they do not care what the price is, because they know in a lot of cases, the inflation or the appreciation on the house is going to more than make up for the interest they're paying on the loan. When that cycle is back in place again, which is going to probably happen in the next year or less, you're going to see all the pent up demand from the point number 2 of demographics. It's going to come back to the market like nothing we've ever experienced before. Julie, the last point,
the last point really is a summary, and it's talking points, so that when you run into people at a party this weekend, you're not going to be a secret agent. When you have somebody that challenges you that they're waiting for the market to crash or waiting for rates to come down or waiting for whatever, you have some talking points. So for example, Tim just mentioned that probably the most important one is just the demographics and comparing, 5 million sales needed for us all to feel like the market's on fire again. And we have over 100 million people, 100 million versus 5 million. I think we're going to be okay with demand, right? Some of the Trump policies, remember, Trump's a real estate guy, right? If you could choose what type of profile for a president would help the housing market, wouldn't you want it to be somebody with real estate development background? I think you would. So the tariffs, what's going on with that? The GSE privatization, that's Fannie and Freddie. We talked about that. It basically ensures a crash-proof 25-year boom. Rates will eventually go down, but now that we've been in this for 2 years and it's not so shocking that it's 6.5%, we're still on track. Mortgage purchase applications have been up something like 14 or 15 weeks in a row. So people are kind of over that whole previous shock and they're ready to buy a house. So homeownership boosts societal stability. Owners are 1.3 times more likely to join civic groups. That's from Habitat for Humanity. Safer, more engaged communities. Bill Pulte, he's in all of this now too. He's, what is he, president of I think it's the largest new construction,
Well, he
builds in
was.
the
He
country,
was.
right?
Yeah, he was. I mean, he's not anymore because he's got that
But
job
another
from.
real estate guy is my point. Do you
Yeah.
think that they're interested in
Well,
making all
but
this work? Of course they are.
but Julie, your point is like I hope these guys are like seeing the obvious. Bill Pulte
Yeah.
wouldn't have that job, uh, given his background and his family's background, if Trump wasn't planning on doing what Julie and I proposed.
Yeah, that's
It
kind of
should
like
be
a
obvious. It should
uh
be obvious. You know?
yes, and I wanted to point out something else that's not in our outline. I think when we do a new update, we'll get some more research on this, but I just see it now and then. And that is what you were talking about, affordability, because that's kind of the hot topic that everybody throws out there. We need to have something happen for it to be more affordable. It's the mortgage innovation that I think we're going to see. I'm following some stories like, it's not just the payment, although that's a big part of it. Like dropping PMI is going to help the payment potentially. It's also the fact that homes are selling for more, so your down payment is more. There's over 100 different programs in the country right now for down payment assistance, and a lot of that are grants. So, you're going to see a lot of different types of mortgage ownership grants coming from different companies. Maybe the advent of the 40-year mortgage will come back, different things like that.
Well,
And even looking at the fact that the debt to income ratios have never been updated with the prices going up.
think
To
about
expect
this.
to hit a 28% DTI is kind of hard to hit right now. And there's a lot of people talking about changing that, realistically, it's more like a 50% to, for the purchase prices that we have, and that should be okay. Why haven't we updated that in 40 years?
Well,
So,
Julie, you're going to have companies. This is another way of thinking of it, who are going to, as a way of trying to attract employees, you're going to have companies that are going to be willing to take an ownership stake in helping people buy houses. It's going to be an
sure.
incentive, kind of like health insurance was. You're going to
Mhm.
have private companies. We talked about Fannie Freddie's taking an ownership stake to help people purchase homes. There's no doubt in my mind that private money is going to be chasing the same opportunity. So you're going to see a lot of different mortgage innovation, home buying opportunities.
Multi-generational mortgages as well. We're starting to see
Yeah,
that pop
totally.
up.
Yeah, exactly. So for example, probably within 12 to 24 months, assuming our predictions are right, you're not going to just be going to your local lender and they're going to tell you the 5 different programs that Fannie and Freddie offer that your buyer qualifies for. You're going to be going to a lot of different sources. And this one, by the way, offers an ownership, basically will pay the down payment for your borrower. And this is the ownership they want 5% return on their investment or whatever it is. It is going to be extraordinary. Government gets out of the way. Fannie and Freddie become private again. Building boom like we've never seen before. Demographics like we've never seen before. And the one thing that didn't make into these notes, Julie, and this is
Hmm.
true, we've run different numbers on the projected number of real estate agents that are going to be needed to handle the real
Right.
estate, the volume of transactions. And we ran it through 3 different AI basically. So right now, even if you were to factor in AI having a positive effect on the real estate industry, like kind of just figuring out what the actual agent
Hmm.
count would need to be. We came up with or other AI, Grok came up with a approximation of at least 7 to 10 million agents will be needed within the next 10 years, I believe it was, just to handle the sheer volume of real estate transactions that are going to be happening from all the increase in the volume from
Yeah.
demographics and all the other things we just said. People will be buying first homes, second home, third homes.
We just
People,
need the homes to buy. That's the bottom line. So,
right?
what's interesting is if you look at the past 4 or 5 years, where even going past, back in time into 2018, 19, who's to say that we have to be at a 4 to 6 million home sales per year? If we had more to sell, wouldn't it be 10 or 12 or 15
Of
million a
course.
year? Right. So just because that happened, you talked about, I think on the Friday podcast, that humans tend to only compare their own existence, right? And
Their timelines.
their own timelines, and they forget that that was caused by something, right? Just because
Well,
that's how it went doesn't mean that that's what the future is going to be. We just need to have more homes to buy. And some of
right.
that's
So
going to come from the things we talked about. And there's going to be new things that haven't even been invented yet.
Well, Julie's point is that generally speaking, people only reference their own lifelines,
Right.
lifetime on this earth for their information for when they're trying to
For their
figure
own
out what's
projections and
exactly.
predictions.
And so this is the reason that we're talking about something that if you look back in history, something similar happened after World War II. The government started working with Sears and Roebuck and other companies just start literally helping people. You go to Sears and Sears and Roebuck. Yeah. You go to their catalog, you'd order a house, it'd be delivered to the local railroad station. You and your buddies would go pick it up in your pickups. You would deliver it, or you drop it off at the build site. The build site was subsidized by the government. I grew up in a neighborhood called Colonial Hills in Worthington, and that it was exactly what I just said. It was developed after World War II, and the size of your lot was dependent on your rank in the military. So
also, did you know that the type of home, like your upgraded, those 2 stories in your neighborhood, those were the highest ranking officers. You couldn't build a 2-story if you were a lower rank.
Yeah,
So
isn't
you
that
got
funny?
the cooler house if you were higher up.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen that way, but it's going to basically happen
But that's
that
a great
way.
example.
Yeah, exactly. So this is what we're having to look forward to. This is what's going to happen next. And so if you're, oh my God, AI is going to put us all out of business. No, it's not. AI is going to make it so that there's more, you're going to be able to do absolutely more. Like we were reading an AI article this morning, and AI's now, for the first time ever, AI, I forget which one it was able to work for 8 hours straight without taking a break at a consistently high level. If you guys have noticed, if you're using AI a lot, there's a degradation that happens after you've used it. If you're having it work on a larger project, it starts to forget the things it previously said. That's kind of a glitch in the way that AI works. Well, they're working past that.
I think it was Claude that's more efficient.
It was Claude, yeah. So they're going to essentially, AI is going to make it so that you can spend more time working with buyers and sellers, which is a good thing because there's going to be a heck of a lot more buyers and sellers that are going to be demanding housing. Here's another thing. How long does the average American stay in a home? Historically, it's been 7 years. Well, why has it been 7 years? Because selling your home, getting financing, finding another place to move is a lot. There's a lot involved. Well, what if all of a sudden that whole process is able to happen faster? Like it used to be that when you go from one car to the next, it was a big hassle. Sell your old car, get financing, the whole thing. And now people, move from lease to lease, finance to finance.
You could
all
do it
the
today if
time.
you felt like it. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not a big deal. You can do it anytime you want. Well, real estate still has all these processes in place, all this bureaucracy, all this stuff in place. That's going to be, and it is being pushed aside. So that means the sales velocity will increase. You are in what might be, aside from AI, frankly, the best industry to be in for the next at least 25 years. You are literally at the foothills, yes, of what is going to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest housing boom in the history of humanity. And we studied this. Julie and I went all the way back as far as we could study Greek, Roman, the whole thing. The only parallel we found was what the US was doing for housing after World War II. Other than that, this is going to be something like we've never experienced before. You've got to feel that energy. You've got to feel that motivation. And if you're feeling dragged down because you've had a tough few years, or you're paying attention to the wrong things, you're listening to the wrong people, you're watching the wrong, you got to purge all that stuff and start opening your mind to how absolutely incredible your future can be. You're not too old, you're not too young, you're not too dumb, you're not too smart, you're not too pretty, you're not too ugly, you're not all the excuses you've given yourself. Nope. You were smart enough at one point to get a real estate license. Now it's up to you to make the most of it. We've just laid out a roadmap for you to understand and accept the fact that you are in the right place at the right time. The real estate industry is about to take off. Be part of that. Do consider joining with Julie and I at eXp Realty. We believe that eXp Realty, it is right now the nation's, if not the world's largest independent real estate brokerage. We think it's about to hockey stick growth to the next level. If you'd like to talk with Julie and I about being at eXp Realty, because we know it's the next natural step for all of you, you can do one of two things. Down below, there's a link to learn more about our eXp Realty group. You can learn about all the benefits that we offer on top of what you get from joining eXp, which is already pretty exceptional. But we offer a whole suite of additional services and products and all kinds of neat things on top of what eXp offers. Watch the videos, learn about what we're doing, and then you can send me a message. Or if you've already done that, which a lot of you have, and you're ready to join eXp and you're looking for sponsors that are going to be very proactive in your success at eXp Realty, you can text me directly at 512-758-0206, 512-758-0206. Don't call text. I won't answer the phone. And when you do text me, make sure you give me a little bit of information about yourself, your real estate background, and all the rest of it. And then we'll pick that ball up right where you dropped it off when I got the text, and we'll help you move over and move up to eXp Realty. In the meantime, you guys have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday, which means it's feverishly fun free form Freaky Friday. In other words, we talk about whatever we want to. So join us
That's right.
tomorrow on the podcast. Have a great day.